Hello guys, in our previous lesson we discussed Introduction to CSS. In this lesson we are going to discuss CSS Selectors. So what is CSS Selectors? CSS Selector is a part of CSS code which define the particular or specific elements that we want to style or target in our HTML. Yes. CSS Selector is a part of a CSS which define that part that we want to apply our CSS code to. The part which I'm talking about is HTML elements. Let's say you want to apply color to paragraph, or let's say you want to apply alignment to heading, or let's say you want to apply font size to a particular HTML element, then you have to select that element. So the CSS part which selects the element that you want to apply your CSS code to is what we call selector. Yes, in previous classes which we discussed the basic of HTML, I think we discussed about selector as well when we are talking about how to add CSS to HTML. Yes, it's just like an HTML element, and you want to apply CSS code to that HTML element. You have to refer to that HTML element. So what serves as point of reference is the selector. If you want to select a paragraph element, you have to start your CSS code by specifying P, then followed by the curly brace. So we have type of CSS selectors. CSS selectors can come in different forms. We have simple selector. Simple selector, an example of simple selector is ID, class name, name or tag name, universal selector, which is asterisk, and so on and so forth. So that is simple selector. We have combination selector. Combination selector, this means having one or two HTML elements, and you want to apply our CSS code to those elements, like having more than one HTML element. Let's say you want to apply the same CSS property to two or more elements on your web page. You want to apply it to paragraph and H1. So you have to use combinator selector, and this is done using comma. You separate different selector with comma. That is, this denotes that you are doing combinator selector. Another one is pseudo-class selector. Pseudo-class. Yeah, this selects elements based on certain states. Yes, whenever you are using pseudo-class selector, that is, you want to select elements based on certain states. Now, let's say now you want to apply, there is something we call hyperlinks. Now, let's say you want to apply a CSS property to a link, to a particular link that has been visited by the user. Apply the link. Let's say you want to apply red color to showcase that, oh, this link has been clicked. Use pseudo class, and the pseudo class selector is visited. Yes. And let's say you want to also apply a CSS property to active. Let's say user is currently on a page, and that page you want to apply a CSS property that, okay, once the user is in this particular page, the hyperlinks at the top or the active link, just apply background color of red. This is pseudo class. The pseudo class selector which we are going to use is active. We talk more about that when we move on. We also have pseudo element selector. This pseudo element selector selects and style part of an element. Let's say you have a lot of paragraphs, and that paragraph has the same class name. And let's say you want to specify the first section of the paragraph. Let's say the first lines of the paragraph to be different from others. Let's say you want to specify the font style, or let's say you want to specify the font weight to be bold. So the first line will be bold and other will have a font weight of normal. That's how pseudo elements work. Or let's say you want to apply first letter, first letter of a line. You want to apply that first letter to be big, or to have capitalize, or to have capital, or to appear in capital letter. Sorry, that's how pseudo element selector works. So select a certain part of an element. And we also have attribute selector. This attribute selector select element based on attribute value. Let's say we have an input form. We have discussed form in HTML. So now, let's say we have an input form. That input form, we have different kind inputs. Inputs can comes in different kind of ways. Forms Input forms can come in form of text. It can come in form of email. It can come in form of password. Now, let's say you want to apply a particular CSS property to the input which has a type of text or a type of email. There is a CSS selector which we are going to use, which is called attribute selector. So that is that on CSS Selector. So now let's write a little bit of code to explain it more better. Let me erase this. I'll erase this. So now, as usual, I will start HTML. HTML is the doc type. Doc type HTML. That is, we are declaring HTML, then followed by HTML open tag, then HTML close tag. So what next? Head. Within our head section, our CSS code goes within the head section. That is, whenever we are having our CSS code within the head section, that is called what? Internal CSS. In our HTML lesson, we discussed 3 forms of CSS. So this one is internal CSS. So I don't waste much time specifying all these parts. So now let me start with a particular heading. Let's say H1. Now let me write, this is CSS class. This is CSS class. Now I will close the H1. So now if I want to select the H1, I'll use H1. This H1 here, before that, I'd like to specify that we're having a style. We want to start a CSS code, then that will be specified within the head tag. So using style tag, then style, then what next? Then you can write our CSS code within the style tag. So I will select H1. I want to apply CSS code to H1. Yes, H1 is the selector here. And you see, the H1 is the selector. This is a simple selector. Simple selector can come in different ways. This is another simple selector, asterisk. This asterisk denotes that we should apply this particular CSS property that we are about to define. We should apply it to all HTML elements. To apply it to all HTML elements present, or which is present here, or which is specified within the body tag. So every element within the body tag, we have this particular CSS property if we use asterisk. So that is that. So now, another one is P. Another one is P tag. The P tag is also a simple selector. We also have class. Whenever you are using ID or whenever you are using ID attribute or class attribute, it's also a simple selector. We have explained ID attribute and class attribute very well during our HTML course. So this, whenever you want to select class attribute, you start the class attribute with dots. That dots denote that this is a class attribute. So if you want to specify it as a selector, you use dot class. And if you want to specify ID attribute as selector, you start with hashtag, then followed by the ID name. So that is that. So now the H1, you want to select this H1, you want to give it, normally by default, the font weight for H1 will be bold. So now I want to change it to normal. I want to change it to normal. So now let's save that. Let's save that and run it in the browser. Let's save that. HTML, no, CSS Selector, CSS Selector.html. CSS Selector.html. So now let's change. Yes, I've changed it to a HTML file. So now let's run. Now you have applied CSS property, which is you changed the font weight to normal. Now let's run it in the browser. Let's see. Now, can you see? So the font weight has been changed to normal. So now let's move on. Let's talk about the combinator selector. That combinator selector, it means we want to apply the same CSS property to two or more HTML elements. That is, whenever you want to do combinator selector, we are going to do that using comma. Yes, you separate all the elements or all the selector, you separate it using comma. Now, this is paragraph tag. Now, let me just write, this is a paragraph. This is a paragraph. This is a paragraph. So now we have two elements here. We have H1, which is heading, and we have paragraph. So now I want to add CSS property to both elements at the same time. I want to add CSS property which has the same property. So now here, let me cancel this H1. So now whenever you are doing combinator selector, you are going to use comma. That is, you'll be having comma separated selectors. This one is H1, a selector, and P, another selector. That's how it makes combinator selector. That is, we are having two selector here. You can have more than two. Depends on the type of selector. Depends on the number of selector you wanna specify. So now here I want to add a particular CSS property to this H1, and I want to add a particular I want to add the same property to paragraph. So let me just have a property of text align. So I want to align the text to the center, both the H1 and the paragraph. So now let's save both the paragraph and the H1. Initially, the text is aligned at the left. So now I want to move both element to the center. So now I will refresh. Can you see now? The text has been moved to the center. That is that on Combinator Selector. And that one is pseudo-class selector. So this pseudo-class selector, the thing is, what I'm going to do now is I will specify some sets of hyperlinks. A links, a okay, a links. Let me see. This is home. This is home. Another one. Let me see. This is index. No. Let me see. This is service.html. Service. Let me see. This is. Let me see. This is visit Google. Visit Google. Yeah, visit Google. So now let me give this href. This Google visit Google href attributes. Specify www.google.com. And this home, I will specify href. So I'm specifying the same file name, which is CSS Selector. CSS Selector.html. So the service, I don't think I have an href value for the service now. So should we leave it or okay? Now let's see how pseudo-class selector work. So now this, I want to specify this links. This is a links. Then I want to use pseudo-class of visited. Pseudo-class of visited. Yes, whenever you click the link or whenever you visit the link, then this CSS property will be applied. So I'll give it a color of purple. Yes, color of purple. Text decoration. I don't want it to text decoration. Let me give it for the sake of this tutorial. Though most of the time you won't be doing something like this, but for the sake of the tutorial, to know that this works, I'll use text decoration of overline. Can use text decoration of underline, overline, or none. But here I'm using overline for visited one. Whenever we visit or whenever you click a particular link, so once it has been visited, then the CSS property will be applied. Let's use another pseudo class for. So that's visited. Let's use another pseudo class for over. So whenever you over hyperlinks, any hyperlinks, then this CSS property will be applied. Let me give you the color of yellow. The color of yellow. Background color. Should I give it a background color? Background color. Okay, let me give it a background color of red. See what I'm talking about now? So now active active, that is the present link or the present page which we are currently. So when the href is specified, then the CSS property will be applied to the active link. Color of black. No. I won't give you color of black. Let me give you the color of white. Background color of black. Background color of black. A padding of 8 pixels. Padding of 8 pixels. So now let's save. Let's save and let's run this. Okay, what's going on? here we have, can you see, whenever I hover through these links, I'll be having background color of red, then color of yellow, the one I specified earlier here, that whenever I hover through, so the one I specified here, that whenever I hover through that link, I'll be having a red color and yellow, red and yellow color for over. Can you see? And what's going on? The active one is not working. What's going on? I give you the color of white and the background color of black. The visited, okay, let me click this. Let me click the visit Google. Why is it not working, man? Oh, let me specify the the link, the absolute link, https, then //www.google.com. So I think now that should work. So now let's refresh. Okay, let me go back. Now let's click on the visit Google. You know, I've visited, now I'm in Google website now. I'm in Google homepage now. So now I will go back. You see the changes in this link, which will denote that this link has been clicked. That is, we have visited the site, that it has been, that the link has been clicked. What's going on? It's still not working. But you can see that the over effect took place. Yes, the over took place. That's that on pseudo class. So now let's move on. We also have another one called pseudo elements. That is, we want to apply a CSS property to either first line or first letter of an element. That is, we want to apply property to certain parts of HTML elements. So now this is paragraph. Let's say H1. H1, we want to apply properties to H1. Let's say we want to apply the first letter, yes, first letter. I want to apply CSS property. So you want to give it the font size. I want it to be very big so that I know what I'm talking about. Font size of 40 pixel. Font size of 40 pixel. I want it to be big and legible. So now let me save and let's see if it works. Okay, let me give it, I think 40 pixel is very small. Let me give it 90 pixel. Let me give it 100 pixel, just for the sake of this class, just to explain how pseudo element works. Can you see? The letter is very big. Yes, that is that on pseudo elements. You want to apply, there are some times that you even want to apply some certain property to the last element of to the last part of an element. You use pseudo element. You can make your research more on pseudo elements. Yes. You also have attributes. Let's say we have an input. Now you want to apply attribute to a certain input with the input type. Let's say here now I want to specify an input type of search. Input type is equal to search. Let's say you want to have a search box located at the top part of your site, whereby user will be able to search some item. Input type search. So now if you want to select this type of element, if you want to select that input type, in this type of element, you specify the input type, you specify the selector like this, input, which is the tag name, then followed by curly, is it curly? No, square brackets. Then inside the square brackets, you specify the type is equal to, this is how you specify the type. Type is equal to search. If the input is text, you specify type is equal to text. And within that input type, which is the text, you are going to use double quotes. So here I'm specifying the search input, which I'm using double quotes within the square brackets. So now input type search, then you can apply any CSS property you want to apply. Let me change. So now let me save it. You see the default appearance of the form. Do you see? It's very small. So now I want to change it. I want to change the width. Let me change the width to 60%. The width to 60%, that is to span 60% of the window, and the height. Let me give it a height of 40. Let me give it a color of gray. That is, any text within the input will appear in gray. So now let me refresh once more. Can you see the style has been applied? So that is that on type of CSS selector. Thank you very much. So in CSS selector, we have simple selector, we have combinator selector, we have pseudo class selector, we have pseudo element selector, and we have attribute selector. So as time goes on, you'll be able to understand more about selector in this CSS class. Thank you very much.